You are live. Please unmute.
So microphones are now unmuted.
Ready, Michelle?
Put it in my.
Good evening. Commissioner Rock, would you lead us in the pledge? Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Kramer,
Present.
Commissioner O'Rourke,
Present.
Commissioner Rexroad,
Present.
Chairman Russell,
Here.
Commissioner Ross,
Present.
Commissioner Alguier,
Here.
Commissioner Lautner, present, all present.
Thank you. Well, we have a number of minutes ready for approval. If anybody would like to make a motion, or anybody else, well, any of them off of our packet. We have 8 sets here. One of them was a closed set, and we've already handled that.
I would move to approve the minutes as presented.
Support.
All those in support of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved, 7-0. We now have approval of the agenda and any late additions. The clerk and the administrator have recommended that we remove consent item number 2 and late addition request number 3. Do we have any other agenda deletions or additions? 2 and 3. Late addition 3. Yes. Could I have a motion?
I would move that the agenda be approved as amended.
Support. All those in support of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved, 7-0. Thank you. Thank you to the public that has come this evening, and this is the first of our 2 public comment sessions. You have 3 minutes at this time. If you would like to come forward and sit at the table and make public comment, just raise your hand and we'll welcome you. Bill. You came with a help today.
I come with help every day. I don't have my clock, so shut me up, I'm ready. Bill Wiesner, Elmwood Township, and again, why not make it life simple? And where we don't have to trust anyone, we verify everything in the whole United States, starting in Leelanau County. 1 person, 1 ballot, 1 vote, 1 day, allows for no fraud. The black box machines, you can't trust them. Got my DVDs again. Millions of years or global flood. It makes a big difference in your worldview. Give them to anyone here or anyone in the schools. This handout on the front, that's not part of it. I finally got it pasted in there somehow. But that is a ballot, I believe, in Georgia. And look at the markings on the back. You can't just print those off. Those are printed specially, and you number them, I believe. You can number them. I believe I've heard that said, but it's got this background. You know, I asked here in Elmwood if during the test, if I heard other people could just copy ballots and run them through, and they go through in that pre-test. And Connie said, no, they won't, that won't work. Well, can I try it? No, you can't try it. It worked elsewhere in the state. So this is what we need. where we don't have to trust people, where we have cameras and we verify everything. Now, this is the Alex Halderman report, and it's just the first 6 pages. And I'll just go right back to the back page, because that one, page 6, it's numbered page 6 of 96. It says, the bottom part there, not sufficiently secured against technical compromise to withstand vote-altering attacks by bad actors who are likely to attack future elections in Georgia. They used Dominion. They used it a little differently than we do. But what's in our black box? Why doesn't possibly has the same similar stuff in it? Hostile foreign governments such as Russia, which has targeted Georgia's election system in the past, and domestic political actors can compromise to the same extent and as or more easily than they replace similar weaknesses, including readily bypassed user authentication, susceptibility to malware that spreads from a central point to machines throughout a jurisdiction, even easier to exploit technology that is simply simple to investigate and modify. Despite the addition of the paper trail, they can change individual votes and most election outcomes without detection.
Thank you, your time.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to make public comment? Mr. Mikowski?
Good evening. We're here to continue the process of getting answers and accountability for the key subject, single issue subject, the Board of Commissions, May 11th, 2021 clerk loading decision. It looks to us like the commissioners at that time abused their power to hurt taxpayers and to damage the clerk. We watched this all for many meetings, and it looks like there's a lack of love or charity among the commissioners, the prior commissioners particularly. And we do not know that, but it may be for narcissistic reasons. We don't know, or maybe just plain dirty politics. We are very impressed, Chairman, for stating it very clearly at the last executive committee meeting, which was identified in the Leelanau Enterprise, what the commissioners did and where we're at. But the only thing missing is we're going to continue and waste money when we are quite sure that in the research, we found out that at the October 10th, 2021 meeting, we have a statement made by Chairman Wessel. Why would we approve these positions knowing that we don't have those answers and knowing that we don't need the positions? Since then, we have not seen any report that justifies these positions and for doing what the commissioners did on that thing. Also, at that same meeting on October 10th, the clerk was asked about the ramifications of that. It is stated that you have no plan and you have not involved the players. It may be intentional, and it could be you have not included the players that are doing the work. This is a dangerous road you are traveling. Crocker is very concerned for the county. She continued that the shift can be made, absolutely, and she believed the commissioners are choosing the wrong way to handle this. And the end result, which we are witnessing 2 years later, the end result will be on the commissioners. It's been a very damaging and very expensive journey so far by not halting this process, but continuing on And we will continue to waste money for years when these positions were not necessary and could have been handled in a much better way. Again, there was never a report put together why these positions were needed. And you all commissioners continue on supporting this process in an empty vessel with no justification, need, or necessity or benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Any other public comment this evening? Yes.
Hello, I'm Renee Weiler and I live in Lake Leelanau. And I am the co-chairman of the National Whistleblowers Committee in support of Resolution 6021. And I mentioned that a couple months ago. And so we're going to be working on that. Our committee has about 100 different whistleblowers, and we're cleaning up the land records. And what we're doing is we're looking for our constitutional sheriffs to help out, because the FBI, the SEC, the DOJ, all the alphabet agencies are standing down while our land records and our voter records are being manipulated. So what I'm doing here is giving you my memo to each one of you. It's got each one of you has a name here on this one. And I'm also giving you who owns Dominion machines. This is something, or not Dominion, who owns Dominion. And you can see here on our schematic that we're concerned with BOC Harvest, which is owned by Hunter Biden. That is laid out on this schematic, so I'll give that to you. Other business I wanted to address is the Fannie Mae Cider letter that I gave you a while back. And this is a tri-party agreement between the government, Fannie Mae, and state bar attorneys in the taking of lands. And in here, they say, every law firm who signed this agreement agreed to keep the true party of interest, the government, confidential while pursuing land takings. For those performing bankruptcy work, attorneys agreed to keep the government hidden on proof of claims. So this is a leaked letter from the Massachusetts Supreme Court, and it has the clerk's name on here. And this is the unredacted copy, and I will give this to you, the clerk, so that will help you. And I also want to mention my voting records. I got my individual history from the Michigan Bureau of Elections. This is through Scott Ogney, and I have no idea how to explain the jurisdiction. Apparently there's 13 records, and I voted 13 times in Leland Township, which is false. Half of those times I voted in Cleveland Township, and my Cleveland Township records from 2010 to 2016 are falsified, because it's saying that I voted in Leland Township.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments this evening? Yes.
Hi, my name's Amity DeCrute from Maple City, and I like to support what Bill said. One person, one vote, one day, one ballot. I would like to go to bed on election day knowing that my vote wasn't diluted by people that have been dead for 20 years. And so I support everything that he has said, and we've got to clean up the voter rolls. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hunter.
Good evening. John Hunter, Bingham Township, District 2. I've been in this seat before. I'm aware of the 3-minute rule. Thank you very much. And while I can ask questions, I personally do not expect an answer. But I believe that in a more private setting or conducive setting, some of you commissioners should ask a question or two, and you deserve an answer or two. As mentioned in our local paper, and now more fully explained in the tentative minutes from the June 6th Finance Audit Committee meeting, there are two commissioner comments that I would like to address. Chairman Wessel goes to great lengths to give a very clear and concise explanation of the 2022 audit and accounting of challenges that arose by this reorganization, the challenges that have been met and the challenges yet to come. Well over 400 words in summation that an interested layman such as myself can easily understand. And this brings me to my dilemma. Replying to Chairman Wessel, Commissioner Lautner commented in around 40 words, and I'll quote those, that she thinks it was very opinionated and misstated in a lot of ways.
Mr. Hunter, please make sure you address the entire board.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
then I should just say one commissioner. Okay, all right. And this one commissioner doesn't think it was necessary. This one commissioner thinks more could be said, but this one commissioner does not think more should be said right now. And considering this commissioner is the last remaining member of the board that voted for this reorganization, it's hardly a surprise that this commissioner wouldn't still be objecting over what is essentially the outcome of this own commissioner's actions. And what is it this commissioner cannot mention? Will a time ever come that this commissioner can provide some clarification to her comments? Is there some type of material weakness, deficiency, or heaven forbid, suspicion still around in the county government or staff? Or is this just a dark cloud somewhere over the horizon that only this commissioner can see, promising rain, yet not delivering a single drop? Inquiring minds want to know, such as myself, and I believe the Leelanau County voters deserve an answer to these questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. You've had a long day today.
Yes, I did. I'm Harry Steffens, resident of Leland Township, precinct delegate. And something you may not know, I was a missionary. I did mission work in Papua New Guinea. I stood up to the corrupt church and government in Papua New Guinea. Ask me about it sometime. I'd be happy to share that with you. What I want to do though is I want to read something. I call it a prayer, but those unbelievers in the crowd, call it what you want. Call it a wish list of my fairy godmother if you want to. But anyway, let me read this. Heavenly Father, Lord of nations, as we consider the deplorable condition our country is in, we pray that you would be with us and help us to restore our nation to its constitutional roots. Support us in defending our liberties and give us and those we have entrusted with the authority of government the spirit of wisdom. Give our representatives, commissioners, and others in authority discerning hearts so that they vote for those things that are right and just and beneficial for all. Open their eyes to the corruption in our voting system and return us to honest and fair elections with one-day voting and hand-counted paper ballots. Be with our teachers and help them to see the evils of CRT and woke agendas. Remove racism, homosexuality, transgender, and pornography from our schools. Encourage our teachers to exercise their right to free speech and religion by opening their classes with prayer and a pledge of allegiance. And encourage them to exercise their right to bear arms to defend themselves and our students. Reawaken your people to a commitment to justice, the sanctity of marriage and the family, to the dignity of each individual life, and to the undeniable truth that human rights begin when a human life begins and not one moment later. Lord, we humbly pray that you will forgive our nation for its many sins and heal our land. Restore our nation to the God-fearing constitutional republic that it once was. Lord, we ask that you will bless us, keep us, and guide us so that all our decisions on all that we do will be pleasing to you. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment this evening? Yes, sir.
My name is Keith Badoon. I live up by the lighthouse. What I want to say is that when we do the Pledge of Allegiance, there's a lot that means to that. Number one, it states that we are a republic. We are not a democracy. We are a republic. And the Constitution and the amendments are based on that. So we need to understand that we are a republic. We are one nation under God. We are not one nation under the WEF or the WHO. We are not. And myself and millions of other people will not accept anything but being a republic.
Thank you. Any other public comment? We will have a second public comment session at the end of our meeting. Thank you for coming this evening. Any commissioner comments at this time?
We had a wonderful senior expo today.
We did. Congratulations to the senior services staff and all the staff that were involved.
Do we have a number of attendees yet? Any idea?
I know they had 500 lunches and they were all gone.
Fantastic.
It was wonderful to see everyone.
Well, thank you. At this time, we're moving down in our agenda to communications, proclamations, and presentations, and we'll start with our administrator update.
Good evening, everyone. Again, I'll reiterate Commissioner Algire's comments and Commissioner Lautner's. I want to thank those of the commissioners that made the time to be there today to volunteer or to attend the event. Special kudos out to our Senior Services Commission or Senior Services group and staff. That leads right into Senior Services Director. I do have a press release and I wanted to notify the Board of Commissioners that we have hired another individual that will start on July 17th. And that individual is Lena Vandermeulen. Lena has been selected as the future Senior Services Director for Leelanau County. She is a resident of Suttons Bay. And this position will be vacated by April Messias in mid-July to initiate her geriatric counseling services. So it's a very noble position why she leaves us. It's for a very positive reason. And so this opens up the opportunity for us to welcome Lena into this position. So Lena has been serving for over a decade at the Leelanau County, sorry, I get this right. At Meadow Lodge, and she's had a variety of different positions. She's a certified therapist in terms of physical therapist, so she's done direct patient care. She also, and she has a degree in that, and then she also has been working in administration, working her way up as an activities director, the whole way up to the admissions director. So she brings a great skill set, a great deal of knowledge, is a Leelanau County resident, and I think she'll do an amazing job. So I'm excited to share that information with the board. Also on my list today, just want to kind of give you a couple other project updates. We did meet with the architects and engineers regarding the lower level health department, environmental division. That project will be rebid, and we anticipate having the bids back in July for the board to consider. So that scale of that project has been scaled down just a little bit. The scope has been scaled down. So we're hoping that we'll be within the target of our dollars for that. And then our HVAC 2 and 3 pending RFPs in July will be, the bids will be back to the board in August for consideration on that project as well. A couple upcoming events, Wednesday, July 12th, or the afternoon on July 19th. We're looking at a committee of the whole regarding the county policies. So I'll get this communication out with dates so the board can consider those dates. Tuesday, July 18th from 3 to 4, we will have a county employee elected official ice cream social. So that is an opportunity for the board to participate in that. Directly following that, we'll have the BPW meeting. And then that evening will be a regular board commissioners meeting. So we'll sugar you up and then let you attend the board meeting. And then Tuesday, August 8th, we'll be completing the budget documents to the board or providing them to the board. So that will start our budget planning process. So a lot of things happening and a lot of good things. So just wanted to kind of give you all an update on a couple of those items.
Any questions for Deb before we move on? Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm sorry, one other thing. I want to thank the clerk for helping us with these agenda items, or not agenda items, but action items and motions. This is something that she had shared that she had done in the past, and so I think this will all be incredibly helpful to all of us as we move forward. So 6 months in, I think this will make all of our lives a lot easier. So thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Well, now we move down to our second presentation, and it's my pleasure to introduce Beth Verhey. Beth comes to us from working around the world on children's poverty issues with UNICEF and social policy agencies all over. She's now involved, I think, with the Early Childhood Investment Corporation and the state of Michigan. And ever since Ridge Magazine put out a Poverty in Paradise article about 10 years ago, this Board of Commissioners have each year had an update on children and families in poverty in the Alice. And Beth is here today to give us an overview of this year's update. So thanks, Beth.
You're welcome. So yes, perhaps one caveat is I am here as a pro bono volunteer. I have not had any professional relationship with the Alice data or other sources, but have become very impressed with it in terms of really capturing a picture of the challenges the majority of our households, even we can say, face, and what some of the underlying issues are to guide policy in terms of where to focus efforts and chip away at. I think a lot of you are already familiar, so I'll try to breeze over some of the basic, what is Alice and what's behind it. And I have 3 slides, and that's way too much data to cover in less than 10 minutes. So I can provide more, but I'm only going to make some highlights in terms of actual presentation. So the ALICE acronym stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. And I sometimes think it's important to start at the back of that in terms of employed and income constrained. And what the data team really has been focusing on, and I'll turn to that in the second slide, is tracking a more granular sort of sense of basic household costs than are captured in the Consumer Price Index and other perspectives. So, and they try to issue reports every 2 years, and there has about a month ago been a data update. So this is the first opportunity we have to look at post-pandemic realities for our struggling households. A lot of that is data that was captured in 2021, and then there are a couple of supplemental surveys that are able to layer that go as late as November 2022, I should say. So I'm sure you're not surprised that through the pandemic, there is not good news. We continue to have a very high proportion of our households that cannot make ends meet. This is really the reality of paycheck to paycheck, one emergency, one car repair, one unexpected health expense away from really facing hardship. And what's different than the federal poverty level is that these households are then not eligible for most of the programs that are structured either at the federal level or at a state level. So briefly, I wanted to capture quickly that our 2023 figure for Leelanau County is that 46% of our households are below the ALICE threshold. And the next slide will go into what those thresholds are. That is an increase from the year before, or 2 years before really, which was pre-pandemic data. We were at 43%. You'll see in that yellow band on the first slide, we're going to stay here a while because we're moving the slides, that compared to our other Grand Traverse Bay area counties, were quite a bit higher than the rest of them. Michigan's level overall is at 39%.
And the part that is the mitten and those blue gradients is particularly sobering. It shows that we are the county with the highest cost of living in this entire state of Michigan. So that bar graph across the bottom is showing what those gradients represent in terms of a survival budget for a family of 4 where both children are not yet in kindergarten. The reddish graph is trying to capture the data for you on a per township level. 2 years ago, only Casson and Leelanau were at that 50% level, 50 and 52. So it's really sobering how across the county these figures have gotten worse. So yeah, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Overall, I like to frame this as the middle class has disappeared. There is such a high proportion of our working or seniors on limited income that are struggling to make ends meet. There's no longer a middle that can make those ends meet. The blue line there is really the bottom line of the story that this national ALICE team has been tracking. They established something they call the Essentials Index and have been tracking a set of 6 core basic household expense categories since the Great Recession, which is the 2007-8-9 financial crisis. And they show that since then, those prices have increased by 3.4% compared to the Consumer Price Index increasing by 1.8%. Now, a big part of that is that the CPI covers more than 200 categories of goods and services. So things that have declines in prices or hold really steady are averaged into everything else. Whereas this Essentials Index focuses on the 6 categories that you can maybe kind of read in the bar graph there of housing, food, childcare, transportation, utilities. I'm probably missing one off the top of my head. The other thing that's interesting about the difference is that the CPI's data set, sample set is 38 urban statistical areas, whereas this Essentials Index tracks things for all 3,000 counties in the United States. So it's capturing things at a much more granular level and really helps to tailor things to at least a county by county level. Overall, let's see, what else did I want to highlight here? I mean, I don't want to go through each. This is showing they present the data for 4 types of households. I'm showing this for 8, and I'm showing this for 4 in terms of capturing it for a slide. And I just on the right hand there put in a few cross references to get a sense of how really local examples and even more updated data correlate to when they set these thresholds. So I think we've all been reading plenty of news about the housing prices, that our home price to income ratio is now 5.5. That's at New York City levels. The average, I looked at some average daily costs at main child care centers, child care facilities here, and that price is more than the budget figure that they provide. That average is about $1,300 per month per child. And the data about the food insecure is maybe about 6 months old. That other pulse surveys and other data for tracking the food insecure shows that we have 40% of our households that are food insecure. That figure in terms of the budgets has gone up the most. Even though I think we hear more about housing as a comparative level, and I don't know, that one I find mystifying. Yeah, so I think we can go ahead and go to the last slide. This, I think, was a really interesting example, an exercise that the Alice team did, and sort of a special section in terms of the report. So the Michigan level full narrative report is out, but not yet things in a more narrative form at a regional or local level. This is still rolling out, but it really shows how the pandemic level assistance helped households survive. So what you're seeing in those green blocks are the various pandemic related income supports that families, depending on category, would receive, and how they stack up against the blue bar being the components of this the survival budget. For, again, a family of 4 with 2 children in childcare. And it shows that for 2 full-time workers, those green additions that they had to their income through the various stimulus supports helped them survive. And close to survival were based on if they were into part-time positions. And these are Michigan figures, and were calculated for retail and another similar type of job. We still have over 70% of our jobs in Michigan that pay less than $20 an hour. So that it really does capture a basic reality for many of our working families. And then it raises the question that all of these programs have ended just about now. So we can't look backwards yet in terms of data and how they find ways to make up for those income supports that they have when the inflationary increased costs of living are not going back down. So I think we're really going to be facing an even more challenging period in the next couple of years, which is very sobering. And this was wanted to share an update. I think it's really important to maintain a level of awareness as commissioners and everyone in the community of the range of support these families need. And yet go ahead and lightly say, I can't help myself, but ask, what to do. And certainly some things to do are to maintain what we are already doing, indeed our senior services and what's happening with the early childhood millage, what the Land Bank Authority is doing. We have really good food banks. We have some excellent programs. The NMCAA programs are good. But I think it's going to take really localized study and reflection to identify other opportunities. A couple of examples are starting to come out in reporting on uses of ARPA funds. I know all of ours have been allocated, and so that's not an option. But there are a couple of locations that are piloting basic income programs, pivoting from realizing the importance, especially of that early child income, the child income tax credit in particular, as addressing child poverty. The city of Ann Arbor is doing it, and there's covering 100 families for 2 years. And there's a national organization called Up Together that I am hearing has identified a partner in the Traverse City area for also a small pilot. So I think there will be examples to look at, and really hope you can find ways to study and identify opportunities.
Thank you, Beth. Any questions or comments on Beth's update?
Wanted to comment, you said $1,300. I think that's fairly accurate, having 2 children. Just so everyone understands, that's $31,200 for 2 kids in daycare per year. So it's significant.
Yeah.
Anything else?
think that the differential for Leelanau is our housing costs?
Housing and food seem to be the biggest. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Always
Kathy.
has been.
Thanks
Yeah.
for challenging us.
Of the 70s.
Housing wasn't expensive in Leelanau County until about the 70s. That's when Leelanau got started.
Yeah, and there's also been a recent report that we're the wealthiest county in the state of Michigan. Yeah, that they're looking at different data, but.
Beth, thank you for.
You're welcome.
Thank you for always looking at this data and what you're doing. Thank you.
Pleasure.
We are now down to our consent agenda. And before we make a decision on that, I'd like to read a statement for the public on that. The purpose of the consent agenda is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one motion without discussion. Any commissioner may ask that any item on the consent agenda be removed and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected and will not need a second. And these have all been discussed at length at last week's executive committee meeting. Is there anybody that, yes,
I was gonna make a motion, I'm sorry, gonna ask that, but I would move that the consent agenda items be approved absent item number 2 as previously amended.
all those in support of that motion say aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion approved 7-0. Thank you. We are now down then to action item, and we're down to number 12 on our agenda. Human Resources Probate Court Ethics Judge.
Sure, so this request was submitted by Judge Kromkowski at our executive committee session. And this is basically requesting that we increase the hours for the deputy probate register position from 28 hours a week, which is part-time, to 35 hours full-time position. And I think that the motion that was offered last week basically said that it was an approval of that request and for approximately $5,500 for the duration of 2023, and a commitment to consider a full-time position as we look at the upcoming budget process. That did not have a 7-0 vote, I believe it was 6-1, so we're bringing it back to work session.
Commissioner Rivera.
I move that the Leelanau County Board of Commissioners approve the current 28-hour work part-time deputy probate register position be increased to a 35-hour full-time position effective immediately, amounting to a probate court budget amendment of approximately $5,500 for the duration of 2023, and for the consideration of a full-time deputy probate register in upcoming budget discussions.
Support. Any discussion? All those in support of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion approved 6-1. Order no, excuse me. Okay. We're now down to the Leelanau Township Tower. Issue. Do you want to introduce that?
So item number 13A on the agenda is related to the Cherryland Electric Agreement. So this was submitted last week, again, to the executive committee and back to the board. We were pulling one of those items off for legal counsel, but there was no concern by legal counsel regarding this particular agreement.
Commissioner Ruff.
I move that the Leelanau County Board of Commissioners approve the tower space lease agreement for Cherryland Electric Cooperative at the Central Tower Government Center Tower, Olena Tower, and the proposed Leelanau Township Tower, and authorize the county board chairman to sign the agreement pending approval from corporate council.
Support.
Any discussion? All those in support of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved.
One abstain.
Thank you. Motion approved 6-0 with one abstention. Now the tower construction bid.
So as part of the project costs were bid out and the bid came back in within the confines of the targets that we had set. And so it's proposed that we move forward with the bid approval process with Midway Electronics.
Motion. Commissioner Lutton,
I would move that the Leelanau County Board of Commissioners award the Leelanau Township Tower Project bid to Midway Electronics in the amount of $405,500 and approve the agreement pending corporate council review.
Support.
any discussion? All those in support of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved 7-0. Thank you. Now we're at the landowner lease agreement.
So the final component of the tower construction regarding this project is an agreement with Brian and Kelly Mitchell, property lease agreement to have the tower on their property. This is similar to other lease agreements that we currently have in play in the county. And I believe there was a question at the last week's meeting in regards to any legal concerns with this agreement, and legal had weighed in yesterday. So we weighed in and I shared that information with the board yesterday. So there was no concerns in terms of any lease agreement per se regarding Cherryland Electric. So other than the potential of having something addressed in the lease agreement.
Commissioner Restaurant.
I would move that the Leelanau County Board of Commissioners approve the land lease agreement for the Leelanau Township Tower Project between Leelanau County and Brian and Kelly Mitchell, and authorize the county board chairman to sign the agreement pending corporate council review and approval and landowner lease addendum as recommended by council.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in support of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved 7-0. And when the tower project is finished, there's a lot of people in Leelanau Township that will call you and thank you.
They can't right now. so
Right.
yeah.
Not the least of which was seated at the end of the table.
We're now down to item 14 on the agenda, Traverse Transportation Coordinating Initiative. Yep.
Correct. So at last Tuesday's meeting, there was a resolution that was shared with the commissioners regarding the establishment of the intermunicipality committee under Michigan Public Act. And so this is in essence to address the MPO that has been proposed by MDOT for our urban area or metropolitan area, I suppose, of which Leelanau County has a segment of that. In Elmwood Township, Bingham Township is reflected in support through the Leelanau County Road Commission, and also with Leelanau County's involvement with the Airport Authority and also Beta. So we have initiated the process to have a seat at the table regarding this, acknowledging our involvement with this initiative.
Commissioner Kramer.
I move that the Leelanau County Board of Commissioners to approve Leelanau County Resolution 2023, resolution to establish an intermunicipality committee under Michigan Public Act 200 of 1957 for the purposes of transportation planning in the Traverse study area as presented.
Support. Any discussion?
Chairman, I believe there needs to be a roll call vote for this since it's just a resolution.
Before we call a roll on that resolution, any discussion or questions? Good. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Commissioner Kramer,
Yes.
Commissioner Lautner,
No.
Commissioner O'Rourke,
Yes.
Commissioner Rexroth,
Yes.
Commissioner Ross,
Yes.
Commissioner Wessel, or
Yes.
Chairman Wessel, sorry. Commissioner Alguier,
Yes.
6-1.
Thank you. We are now down to item 15, the late edition request of VA approval of 3 county Veterans Service Fund grant applications. We were all sent that information in the mini package that Laurel sent out last Thursday or Friday. Anybody have a motion to make? Quinn?
I would move that the Leelanau County Board of Commissioners authorize the submission of fiscal year 2024 County Veterans Service Fund grant applications to the Michigan Veteran Affairs Agency as presented, along with fiscal year 24 project budget amendment. Support.
Before we have any discussion, if there is any, there was a change in the wording from our EDS on that, from the wording we saw in the packet, I think. Can you speak to that?
Well, I don't think conceptually there was anything that changed with the application. I know that, Michelle, you had spoke specifically with Michael Root today, just to get clarification. So can you share too what your conversation was?
There's three proposals. It's the same grant that we had last year. We are going to make some minor, nothing that changes what you saw, but there are some corrections that need to be made. He also submitted a fiscal year 2024 budget amendment that a new copy did come through today. It's to amend that up, asking for 12,000 in each of the categories, and that also does require approval. So that is what the slight change is. But based what you saw in the context, it's all the same. But there are some housekeeping errors or issues we have to clean up.
Thank you, thank you. Any discussion or any questions on it? All those in support of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion approved 7-0. We're down to our last late edition request number 2, the planning approval of rural readiness grant application. And you want to speak to that?
So this is part of the rural readiness grant. We submitted a letter of intent previously at the board's approval. So that is in regards to a request for up to $50,000 for a grant writer that would be used by a variety of different county departments. And so if we are granted these funds, which now that we received the letter, or we submitted the letter of intent and it has been accepted, now we need to move forward with an application. So that's the next step in this process. And we can apply for up to $50,000, of which the county would be committed to pay 20%. So if we're allotted the full $50,000, that would equate to approximately $10,000 to establish a grant writer for the county.
Russ.
I move that the Leelanau County Board of Commissioners authorize the submission of the MDARD Rural Readiness Grant Program application in support of a county grant writer in the amount of $50,000. Support.
Commissioner Kramer seconded, I think. Commissioner Lauder?
Yeah, I guess my only concern with this is that this is for 1 year. It's not for like, if we use them for, draw it down as far as like if they use $5,000 to write a grant until the end of the 50,000. This is to bring them on to write grants as an employee.
I think that that would be something that we would have to look at. From the standpoint, you know, there certainly is the opportunity for us to contract with a grant writer as opposed to perhaps an employee position. We could see how if we had a contracted agreement, then we could see how useful that was and how much would then be able to help us determine if that makes sense to establish a position going forward.
If we apply for the grant though, can it be done with a contractual employee and not a county employee? Do they have to be a county employee or can we use that money? We don't have the answer to that.
I don't have the answer to that, but I have not heard anything that would oppose that from the standpoint that was part of the letter of intent was either to hire or contract with.
Okay, so this will be just applying for the grant.
Correct.
So we would get those answers before we accept the grant if we're awarded.
Fair enough.
Okay.
That should the motion include that we would be liable for the 20%? Or is it just in the grant? Just, you know, so everything's all open.
Not hurt to include that. Just so you know, also that 10% can be allocated by things such as other than just wages or the contractual, it
In
can
kind.
be things like in kind. So electricity or whatever types of services might be included in that.
Comfortable with that, Jim?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, concerns? All those in support of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved 7-0. And thank you. I think Trudy was the one that did the background work on that. So thank you, Trudy. We now are at review of financials.
I have no more further questions. Kathy, Jen, Michelle, I'll answer all my questions before the meeting, so I don't know if anybody else has any others. There was nothing else we were gonna look at, was there? I got through them. Okay, then I'm all set.
Anybody else? Thank you. You got it off. Nice done.
Nice report.
We're now down to committee reports, recommendations, and resolutions. Anybody?
Is this Commissioner comment?
This is committee reports.
Thank you.
We're now down to special reports by staff, commissioners, or affiliated agencies.
Comment by our.
Yes. Thank you.
Good evening.
Sean's finishing his, or starting his third week. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a minute to update, following up on the Board of Commissioners Executive Committee session last week on 6/13. There was discussion during the readout of the audit findings regarding some questions you had on MERS. We did have a follow-up meeting this week with Tony, who is our regional representative. I think a lot of you may know him. I think we had a good discussion regarding our plan, its performance, and some on future expectations. And I think the action item may be to consider going forward. Deb mentioned the thought around upcoming budget discussions kind of kicking off. So I think there's a timing consideration, but I think there's options also with MERS directly to engage, to go deeper into some of those questions. And so I think those options would include, Tony mentioned in the past, Finance Committee discussion to go deeper, or if your preference is more of a committee of the whole. But I just wanted to throw those out as something that to consider potentially in the next month or so as we start to get into the process.
Thank you. Any comments from the board? I'm sure we'll want to do that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
We're now down to our last public comment section of the agenda. If anybody would like to make public comment, you're welcome to raise your hand at this time. Yes. And this public comment is limited to 5 minutes.
I'm Linda Schimmick. I'm a precinct delegate from Casson Township. I don't have anything really prepared that I'm going to read to you, so it's off the cuff, but what I have in my heart and my head. Many times people come to the table and we're talking about elections, and I'm here with that same concern. And I hope that what you're hearing isn't just falling on deaf ears, because it's nothing that, we're not looking at Leelanau County specifically, we're looking at our country. Last week, Thursday, we had a gathering of over 70 people who heard a man speak. His name was Patrick Colbeck. And I think that some of you may have been given a book that he wrote called The 2020 Coup. His opening statement, when he began speaking to this group of 70 concerned people, was, this is nonpartisan. It has nothing to do with your political affiliation. This is a problem in elections in general. Doesn't matter who you're, where you stand on whatever the issues are or the person is. It's not that. It is a matter of people and companies and things being involved in our elections that are, his story was about the Wizard of Oz And there are people behind the curtain that are controlling things that we have no idea of. And he was, this Patrick Colbeck was a Wayne County senator from Wayne County from 2011 to 2019, was a candidate for governor in 2018. So he has a political background, but he's also a NASA engineer, or a aeronautics engineer. So his what he had to deliver to us was very interesting, eye-opening, and made you want to just look. And that's what I'm asking you, is just not to just, I want you to consider that there's a possible problem. I listened to a documentary today. It was from a county clerk in Mesa County, Colorado. And I'm not referring to any specific election, but this started in her office after the 2020 election. People that put her in office were coming to the office expressing concerns, much like you've been hearing for months here. And she said, I felt it was my duty as the county clerk. She said she knew, I have nothing, I'm doing everything as I should. I have nothing, I'm not worried about anything. But the more people express concern, she thought, I need to take this seriously because I'm representing these people, working for these people, and for my country. So it was after a more just a municipal election of county commission, not county commissioners, but city commission, where it was a panel of 7 people that were on the ballot or more, but there were 4 individuals that just didn't make the grade, in her opinion, and many other people, and as the campaign was going on, and those 4 individuals won. And so when I said that this is a nonpartisan idea, think about the proposals last year, how overwhelmingly they passed or failed on abortion, where Michigan has one of the most lenient abortion laws in the country, and it passed, more than it should have. The same thing with elections. We're going to have a 9. Do we really think that the vast majority of the people thought it was appropriate to have an election go over the course of 9 days? It just, those kinds of things that have nothing to do with what political affiliation you have, but everybody voted, and it just, sometimes there are things that need to be looked at. So this is what happened to this lady in Mason County, and she discovered things that were out of her control because of the electronic machines that we're using, the things that can be done that nobody's guilty of sitting in this room, except we may be guilty of not thinking that this is possible. And I believe that it is possible. We're not election deniers. We're just concerned that when we vote, our votes are counted. And this Patrick Colbeck, when he spoke last week, the argument sometimes is, well, it takes too much time to do paper ballots. And he had in his presentation exactly worked down the time, how much time it would take to count 1,000 ballots. And in the end, if that's what's going, and it was very reasonable and very reasonably done. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Any other public comment? Bill?
So I'm sorry. That's fine. I'm fine. You can just get this foot, just to walk out of here. All right. Getting a hip replacement, not early enough. Sorry. Here we go. I got her. He just goes to sleep when I sit down. Thanks. Thank you. Again, we're dealing with this over and over. Simply want no fraud. Black box machines, especially the ones described in this report in Georgia. Bill Wiesner, by the way, Elmwood Township. It just shows so much vulnerability. So simply one person, one ballot, one vote, one day. And to go along with what Linda just shared, there's Mike Lindell shares there's different camera views. There's the PCAP. Some people laugh about them. Dennis Montgomery shows every county in the country basically lost votes somehow through manipulating with computers. And then there's the fingerprints of fraud, which I gave you the handout, but I didn't really get to it last week. Jeff O'Donnell, and he shows like 81% of the counties, 18 different counties in 9 different states showed definite, the Mesa report count, where it's high on, in this case, Democrat on the bottom at the beginning for about a third of it, and then it goes up to where it should be. And it should be just like rolling a dice. It fluctuates quite a bit at the beginning, and then it's a straight line. We got this line climbing up like this until it finally gets where it should be in 81% of the counties. That's a second camera view. The third camera view is Dr. Douglas G. Franks. He's getting all this false data. No, he takes the census data from the US Census. He takes the population data that would be the population, registered voters and ballots cast from the state. And he can predict how many ballots are going to be cast in every county in Michigan. And like the same age, 20-year-olds, same percentage in every county. That's not natural. That's happening by computers. So it just goes along with what Linda said. And the back page again, this is Alex Halderman report. And by the way, this started in 2016 when then it was the Democrats that were concerned about this. We have Kamala Harris and all the major Democrats speaking very loudly about it, and they suddenly went silent. Now, how much comfort does that give you in that? Very concerned, not so concerned now. I wonder why. But anyway, Alex Halderman, he leans left, okay? And he said at the bottom of that footnote, I have repeatedly offered to meet with Dominion, but I have yet to be taken up with this offer. All of this concerns in this flyer, you just look up the Halderman findings. And going to the table of contents towards the beginning, it mentions threat actors, proof of concept attacks, manipulating the ballots via the ICX printer, defeating QR codes, authentication, demonstrates hardware-based attacks against ICX smart cards, forging technician cards to install malware, creating infinite voter cards, as many as they want, constructing ICX malware again, modifying the ICX app to change votes, defeating applicable defenses, attacking USB devices in the ICX, accessing a root shell via the built-in terminal app. The root is where you have total control. Manual malware installation process, automating malware installation, local malware installation using forged technician cards. I mean, it goes on and on. Directory transversal vulnerability, manipulating logs and protection counters, vulnerable storage design. He said these computers were not designed with security in mind. He doesn't think you could really fix them. They're just so complicated. 2.1 million lines of code in Dominion voting machines. And again, we have the same machines Georgia has, but they just use them a little bit differently down there where they're required to use them a certain way. And and 62% of the people in the country, plus or minus 3%, Rasmussen poll in April, say they thought the 2020 election was thrown by fraud. And 50% of the Democrats believe that we're not doing enough to fix it. Leelanau County, let's be leaders. There's no downside. We have cameras, we have ballots that you can see with, if you shine a light on it, you get all this background. It's like, wow, where'd that come from? So it shows they can't just print them. And it's just so easy to fix. And we've got to get rid of these early ballot drops. We saw the people
Thank you.
Is that it? Thank you.
get your sign bill.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
Hello, John Harbaugh, Suttons Bay. I don't need the 5 minutes. I've said that before, but I'm going to reiterate that there are no irregular actions, no irregularities in counting, certifying, handling the ballots in this county. And again, anyone who thinks otherwise is wildly misinformed or uninformed. Thanks.
Yes.
Yes, I would like to discount what he said, because I've got, this is my house. I did an audit on it in the MERS database, and it doesn't have a mortgage on it. But when I go into the MERS database, I find I have 2 active mortgages. I just have to put a different version of the address to find the active mortgages. So now this ties into the voting. I'm looking at this mortgage, and I went to the Register of Deeds and actually got it. It is registered on my home. It is the mortgage of Adelbert and Beverly Kober. When I went to look up their records for voting in the qualified voter file, I found that Adelbert and Beverly both voted in Leland Township in 2009 and 2010 as absentee voters. You'll see it right here. That they didn't move there until 2016. So I'm going to go up the entire street in Eagle Highway and do the same thing. I'm going to be looking at their mortgages, especially people who moved. People who moved, their records in the voting get moved too. So we have falsification of records in the mortgages here. 2 active mortgages on my house. I sent this to the Attorney General. She says she doesn't have, well, she actually sent it to the Department of Insurance and Financial Services, and they don't have jurisdiction over MERS. And MERS is putting mortgages on my house that doesn't have a mortgage. And this guy's vote is falsified. This is a falsified record. And then we have, I have both of the mortgages that are on my house. Molly Grosvenor, I just found out today, her mortgage is registered in the Wall Street database called MERS, Mortgage Registration Systems, on my house. And I've been looking for this mortgage for about a year. And so I went to the Register of Deeds and found it, that it's my next door neighbor's mortgage is registered on my house. It doesn't have a mortgage on it. So we've got far more problems than just voter fraud. We have mortgage fraud. And it appears that the 2 databases are interfacing. So that's all I have to say about that. But I will be continuing to catalog both the data fraud or mortgage fraud and the voter fraud to see if there's a relationship. And there appears to be a relationship, especially with foreclosed properties. Those are being, their voter records are being moved or being purged from the records. So I don't know why that is, but there is something going on. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other public comment this evening? Yes, Mr. Murkowski.
Good evening again. Just a note, we left with each of you a Wall Street Journal report on Verizon. My personal belief is if you let the private sector do the job, it would already have been done. But large companies try to find government money, and as long as we're willing to throw money at them, they'll readily accept it and postpone the project until they can get everything they can get. I'm going to continue on the May 5th, May 11th, 2021 issue, talk about an article that we found called Legal Mafias and Moral Asymmetries. The moral code. We don't talk about morality very much anymore. In fact, the writer says he doesn't discuss that because it sounds too churchy. And some conflate their sectarian or personal moralisms with what we might call a moral core, that is a handful of essential virtues when we practiced, facilitate social harmony and material abundance. The emphasis is on practice. Though most values in the moral code are non-universal, there is present almost every culture. Morality's big three. Morality, especially in America, has become anemic. So we need to talk about it again. Consider the big three of the moral code. Don't harm, don't steal, don't lie. The big three of politics. And this applies directly to the clerk voting project of the commissioners yet. Politics has its own big three. You harm, steal, and lie. Politics is anti-morality. That's what we have here in this case. Just like the mafia uses these tactics in their enterprise, political actors do too. We had a lot of political actors that did that on May 11th, 2021. Yet most people won't acknowledge this reality. Between failures and imagination, such as the inability to see how things could be otherwise, most people settle for the ways to justify unjust authority. And as far as I'm concerned, that May 11th was an abuse of authority. And it continues to be an abuse of authority. Thank you.
Any other public comment this evening? Thank you all for coming this evening. Any commissioner comment? Yes.
I have one. The online sports betting guide just named Traverse City as cocaine capital of the United States. Yeah, it's great. Here's the article. When you work narcotics, you can't do it from a patrol car. You know, having worked at 3 tours, if T&T comes in here, the sheriff and the fantastic prosecutor that we have, ask for more help for working undercover, please support it. I mean, if we stop drugs in Traverse City, we stop drugs in Rutherford County. That's drugs that didn't get up to Leelanau County. And, you know, it's just, it's a great program they have. They all work well together. Tristan, the assistant prosecutor, we're doing a fine job, but we need to stay on. So,
thank you.
Yes. Yeah, I've been a resident of Leelanau County for over 10 years, and I would like to say that somebody mentioned that we should be leaders. We are leaders, and we are led. Our voting system is led by one of the most experienced and ethical clerks in the state of Michigan, Michelle Crocker. And I am proud of that fact, that we are leaders and that we are providing our residents with a safe and secure way to cast their votes. So, thank you.
Support, the motion.
Gwen.
I would heartily agree with that. I've taken your training. I've sat in on elections for years. We have an excellent, excellent voting system. So I agree with you. We also, for July's meetings, there are a lot of grants, and I do hope that we get that grant writer. There are a lot of grants. There is money right now for energy efficiency, energy projects, and I want to, Leelanau to be a leader in that area as well. And if there are things that we can do, let's do them while the money and the opportunity is here. So we can look for that on the July agenda.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments? Well, then we're down to approval of financials. Yes, Commissioner Lautner?
Yes, I move that the Leelanau County Board of Commissioners approve claims and accounts in the amount of $394,730.78.
Support. All those in support of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved 7-0.
I would move that Leelanau County Board of Commissioners approves post audit claims and accounts in the amount of $5,145,376.27.
Support.
All those in support of that motion say aye.
Aye.
I move to adjourn.